So how far into 2024 could one make a top 10 2023 list? Asking for a friend. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. Today, I'm counting down the top 10 DC Multiverse figures of 2023. I know this video is late, but I got sick back in January, and so it just really threw everything off. Before we begin, a few parameters. 1. I'm only going to be including figures I personally own. Because of that, my list might look different than yours. 2. Just because I own it doesn't mean I reviewed it. In the case of any figure that didn't get its own video, I'm going to do a mini review here. And 3, I'm not including any figures of Batman himself. He's getting his own list. Now, without further ado, let's dig in. Number 10. Storm from Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. A lot of you probably think of this more as a vehicle than an action figure, but it is a representation of a living thing and does have articulation. It's also beautifully sculpted and painted. The Lost Kingdom wave was kind of hit or miss. Black Manta's awesome, but then you have the different size versions of Aquaman himself. What's not up for debate, however, is the fact that Storm is awesome, and made even better by the fact that you can use it as both movie and comic versions of Arthur's undersea steed. Number 9. Infinite Frontier Joker. McFarlane released a lot of different Joker figures in 2023. Most of them were variations of Heath Ledger. Don't get me wrong, the Heath Ledger figure is good, and some of the variants are pretty creative. But Infinite Frontier is not only one of the few comic versions we got in 2023, it's the only one that wasn't reused from the 3 Jokers. This was a completely new sculpt with all the personality of the comic. Seriously, just look at the artwork. The only thing keeping it so low on the list is the fact that accessory-wise, all he came with was a knife. At the very least, an extra pair of non-eyeball holding hands would have been appreciated. Even so, this is an awesome Joker and is no laughing matter. Number 8. The Titans Wave Beast Boy Build-A-Figure. I'll level with you, I was pretty slow to warm on the Titans Wave. So much so that the only one I reviewed was Nightwing. It's not that I don't like these characters, I really do. These just aren't the versions of them that I wanted. If I had to pick a standout from the wave, it would probably be Arsenal, but even he suffers because the paint job makes it look like he's wearing a bikini top. Even this version of Beast Boy really isn't my image of the character. If it were up to me, they would have dropped Nightwing from this line and put the gold label Beast Boy in there instead, and then the Build-A-Figure could have been Trigon. The thing is, I only want to include one Build-A-Figure on the list. Mr. Freeze is fantastic, but I don't really see why he needed to be a Build-A. Same thing with Bane. Otherwise, I couldn't care less about the Jokerized version of Bane, and I'd rather hold out for a regular Cyborg instead of the oversized Flashpoint one. For me, Beast Boy just better encapsulates what a Build-A-Figure should be. A larger-than-life character who's too big for a single issue, but not quite big enough to justify a Megafig. And even though this figure might not be my personal preference, I still acknowledge it was really well done. The sculpting and textures are great, as is all the painted fur. Not only that, but this has got to be the deepest bend I've ever seen on a single jointed elbow. This figure might not be my preferred Beast Boy, but it's definitely a beast. Number 7. Calabac. I only wanted to include one Megafig on my list, and it wasn't terribly hard because, well, there were only a couple I picked up in 2023. Calabac, however, was an instant purchase. Not only was it a character I really wanted, but it was also incredibly well done. The beefy proportions, the texture, and the paint job were all spot on, and what's more, he's generic enough looking that you could use him as an ogre or a troll in other displays. Hopefully, we start getting more denizens of Apocalypse like Desaad or Granny Goodness, but in the meantime, Calabac's doing a fine job of keeping the fire hot for them. Number 6. The McFarlane Collector Edition Firestorm. Oftentimes, the Collector Edition branding just feels like an excuse to charge an extra $10 for a trading card stand, but Ronnie here benefits from being a completely new sculpt and having 8 additional hands. Granted, 6 of them are generic gesture hands that McFarlane includes with a lot of figures, but in addition to these fire fists, he's also got this spaghetti and meatball hand. That brings me to the only criticism that I have of this figure, the colors. On the one hand, you have this super bright, almost fluorescent red with this really dull mustard yellow. If the red was darker or the yellow was brighter, I think it would be better, but as is, it's just very visually frustrating. And this has got to be the darkest fire I've ever seen. Again, spaghetti and meatballs. Don't get me wrong, it's still a way better value than Alan Scott, which for the same $30 just came with an energy effect and a lantern. It's also why Sinestro didn't make the the top 10 despite being a really good figure. Hopefully, if we get a single issue Jason Rusch version, those colors will be balanced out, and hey, maybe he could even come with a clip-on version of the Professor. For now, I like this Firestorm, but he's not quite lighting up the list like he could be. Number 5, the McFarlane Collector Edition 0 Hour Hawkman. This wasn't the first Hawkman that McFarlane's given us, nor is it the only version of this edition. For my money though, this is the superior version. I love the sculpting, and small details like the painted chest hair go a long way to put this figure over the top. I know 0 Hour isn't most people's preferred Hawkman costume, but it was my introduction to him as a kid, so I have a lot of nostalgia for it. The only thing keeping it from being higher on the list is that it was a $30 collector edition. As for the platinum version, well, I have a different list in mind for it. Number 4, Injustice 2 Superman. 2023 was the 85th anniversary of the Man of Steel. As such, McFarlane Toys released a lot of different Superman figures. Unfortunately, most of those releases were either straight up repaints or repaints with just 1 or 2 new pieces. And some of those new parts were massive downgrades. Out of all the DC Multiverse Superman figures of 2023, only Injustice 2 was a new sculpt. And honestly, it's a really good one. All the different lines and textures of the costume have been perfectly replicated, and it's elevated by some really nice metallic accents. The funny thing is, I included a video on this figure as an option in several polls over the last several months, and it was voted down every single time. I'm still gonna do the video because I really want to see some head swaps on this. I'm hoping that this video is gonna help to raise some excitement for that review, because even though I don't personally love Injustice or this design, I still think it's the best made McFarlane Superman of 2023. Number 3, the Batman and Robin Mr. Freeze Build-A-Wave Poison Ivy. Similar to Injustice 2 Superman, I'm planning on doing a full video on this figure, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. Suffice it to say, this is one of DC Multiverse's best ever. The likeness? Perfect. The sculpted detail? Spot on. And then you have all the extra painted shading, which is something we almost never get. To me, the only thing that holds this figure back is the fact that you had to get it as part of a Build-A-Wave, and with no accessories but the Build-A-Piece, it just feels like this could have been a single release, especially for collectors like me who'd like to get more than one so we can turn them into comic versions. Even so, $5 extra is a small price to pay for the standout figure of a standout wave based on a less than standout movie. Number 2, Stealth Iron Man. Oh, sorry, I meant Blue Beetle. Which one? Both. Instead of releasing one jam-packed figure chock full of accessories, McFarlane split them into 2 different releases. Combined, it gave us a lot of really cool options. The downside, of course, was having to buy 2 of the same figure. If they all came together in one big bundle, it might have been my number 1 figure of the year, but its saving grace is the fact that the costume is so accurate to the comic, you can have one on your comic shelf and one on your movie. Who knows if we'll be seeing this version of Jaime Reyes on the big screen again, but I'll be enjoying him on my shelf for years to come. Before revealing my number 1 pick, I do want to spotlight one honorable mention: the McFarlane Toy Store exclusive Speed Force variant of the movie Flash. Let's start at the beginning. On May 12th, I released my video reviewing the Flash movie figure. A couple of days later, and McFarlane Toys revealed this one. Not for pre-order, for immediate sale. It was shipped immediately, and I received it in only 2 days. Honestly, compared to other things I've ordered from McFarlaneToysStore.com, that was lightning fast. And yes, the pun was intended. Getting this in hand, and I was overwhelmed with the same feeling that a lot of other collectors had. This should have been the main release. Honestly, which one looks like the better match for young Barry? Not only that, but just look at how much better it matches up with other similar Flash figures. Even worse, the immediate shipping tells me that they had this thing waiting in the wings all along. Remember, this was not available for pre-order. We had no idea it was going to exist until most of us had already bought this one. When the Black Adam wave came out, you had a choice between caped or uncaped. Collectors on a budget could pick up the one that they liked better, or for the diehards, they could get both. Here, I feel like I was tricked. Of all the Flash-related figures of 2023, I personally prefer the Flashpoint one because, well, it fills a more important hole in my collection. But regardless of how you feel about Ezra Miller or the Flash movie, this is an objectively better made figure. It's intricately sculpted and has a lot of paint detail. As a single issue, it was $5 less than Flashpoint and has more character-specific accessories, and it just plain looks classier than the glossy candy apple red mass-market release. If it wasn't for the shenanigans, this would have been on the top 10 itself and possibly pretty high. I've made a lot of Ezra Miller jokes on this channel, but this time the joke was on us. And my number one DC Multiverse action figure of 2023 is the McFarlane Collector Edition Wonder Woman. It benefited from being built on the bulkier Superwoman dough, featured some fantastic metallic paint, is superposable, and came chock full of accessories. I have minor nitpicks about the figure, like the facial expression or the boots, but overall this is everything I could have wanted and more. It's so good that, if you didn't see, I'm giving one away. For a chance to win, check out my Power Princess Versus. Shameless plugs aside, this figure is my favorite DC Multiverse of 2023, and I can't help but wonder which version of Diana we'll get next. Agree? Disagree? Sound off in the comments and share your list. And while you're down there, let me know if you think it's too late into the year for these kinds of videos, or if you're hungry for more. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.